Commander Kate Morrison stood at the window of her research ship and looked out at the asteroid field before her. The rocks floated in space like frozen islands in a dark ocean. Her team had been searching this area for 3 months now, looking for anything that might explain the strange energy readings they had detected. Kate was tired but excited. Something was out here. Something old. Something important. Behind her, the science officer named Lisa Taylor called out that she had found another energy spike. Kate turned and walked to the control station. The screens showed a massive structure, hidden inside one of the larger asteroids. It was not natural. The lines were too straight, and the angles too perfect. Kate ordered the ship to move closer. As they approached the asteroid, Kate could see that part of it had been hollowed out long ago. Inside the hollow space was a facility made of materials that gleamed even in the darkness of space. The walls seemed to be made of crystal and metal mixed together in ways that should not be possible. Kate suited up and took a team of 4 people with her. They crossed the empty space between the ship and the facility using their jetpacks. When they landed on the entrance platform, Kate felt a strange tingling in her bones. The facility was waiting for them. The doors opened without anyone touching them. Inside, the halls were lined with panels that glowed with soft blue light. The air was breathable, which made no sense after thousands of years. Kate led her team deeper into the facility. They passed rooms filled with machines that hummed quietly. They saw walls covered in writing that looked almost like ancient Earth languages, but not quite. The symbols seemed to shift when Kate looked at them directly. In the center of the facility, they found a massive chamber. The ceiling stretched up so high that their lights could not reach it. In the middle of the chamber stood 2 platforms. On the first platform lay a woman. Her skin was pale and perfect. Her ears came to delicate points. She wore armor that looked like it was made from starlight itself. Her hair was long and silver. She was beautiful in a way that made Kate feel like she was looking at something from a dream. On the second platform lay a creature that should not exist. A dragon. Its body was larger than any earth animal. Its scales shimmered between silver and deep red colors. Its wings were folded against its sides. Even sleeping, it looked powerful and dangerous. Kate approached slowly. Her heart was beating fast in her chest. She reached out to touch the crystal case that covered the woman. The moment her fingers made contact, the entire facility came alive. Lights blazed everywhere. The machines began to hum louder. The crystal cases over the woman and dragon started to glow. Kate stumbled backward as the cases opened with a sound like breaking glass. The woman took a breath. Her eyes opened. They glowed with violet light that filled the chamber. The dragon stirred and smoke drifted from its nostrils. Kate tried to speak, but no words came out. The woman sat up slowly. She looked at Kate and the other humans with an expression of confusion and then recognition. She spoke in a language that Kate had never heard before. The words flowed like music and felt ancient, but somehow Kate understood pieces of it. The woman was asking where she was, how long had passed, whether they had returned. Kate managed to find her voice. She told the woman that they were humans from Earth, that they had found this place by accident, that they meant no harm. The woman stood up from her platform. She was tall and moved with grace that seemed impossible. She walked to Kate and placed a hand on her forehead. Images flooded into Kate's mind. She saw wars between stars. She saw humans fighting with weapons of pure light. She saw an empire that stretched across galaxies. She saw this woman and her dragon standing guard over something terrible and powerful. The woman removed her hand and spoke again. This time, Kate understood perfectly. The woman said her name was Lyraine Shadowmoon. She said she was a warden. She said she had been sleeping here for thousands of years. She said she was waiting for the day when the Empire would return. And then she said something that made Kate's blood run cold. The Empire was here. Kate pulled out her communicator and contacted her ship. Lisa answered immediately, and her voice was panicked. She told Kate that long-range sensors had just detected a massive fleet entering their sector. The ships were not human. They were heading toward Earth. There were thousands of them. Kate looked at Lyraine. The elf woman's face was grim. Behind her, the dragon had fully awakened. Its eyes burned like molten gold. Smoke poured from its nostrils, and the temperature in the chamber rose. Lyraine spoke quietly. She said that the war engine must wake now. She said that humanity would need to remember what it truly was. She said that the coming days would change everything. Kate asked, "What war engine? What did humans need to remember?" Lyraine looked at her with those glowing violet eyes. She said that Earth was not humanity's first home. She said that humans were created for a purpose. She said that the Genesis engine had been sleeping beneath their feet all this time, and now it must wake or humanity would fall. The dragon roared, and the sound shook the entire facility. Kate knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The forgotten war was beginning once more, and she was standing at the center of it all. Liren moved through the facility with her dragon Ember following close behind. Kate and her team struggled to keep up with the elf woman's quick pace. They returned to Kate's ship where Liren placed her hand on the main computer console. The screens filled with symbols and images that made no sense to anyone except her. Liren began to speak, and her words were translated through the ship systems so everyone could understand. She told them a story that seemed impossible. She said that thousands of years ago, Earth was not the birthplace of humanity. Humans had come from somewhere else. An elder civilization had created them, not as slaves or servants but as guardians. They were made to protect something powerful, something dangerous, something that could reshape reality itself. The Genesis engine. Liren explained that the engine was not just a weapon. It was a living thing made from technology and biology mixed together. It had the power to erase entire star systems from existence. It could create holes in space and time. It could unmake anything that existed. Long ago, an empire called the Celestian Dominion had tried to conquer all the galaxies. They had weapons that could destroy planets. They had ships that numbered in the millions. They seemed unstoppable. But humanity's ancestors used the Genesis engine against them. They pushed the empire back. They destroyed their fleets. They erased their strongholds. The war was brutal and terrible. But the cost was too high. The Genesis engine needed power to function. It fed on life force. It consumed souls. Billions died to fuel the engine. The trauma was so great that humanity could not bear to remember. The elders made a choice. They would hide the engine away. They would suppress the memories. They would let their descendants believe they had evolved naturally on Earth. They would forget their purpose and their power. Liren and Ember were assigned as wardens. Their job was to guard the engine and make sure it stayed asleep. They would watch over humanity from the shadows. They would only wake if the Empire returned. And now, after thousands of years, the Empire was back. Kate listened to all of this with growing horror. She asked Liren if the engine could stop the fleet that was coming. Liren said yes, but there would be a price. The same price as before. Lives would be lost. Souls would be consumed. Kate asked if there was another way. Liren shook her head slowly. She said the engine was humanity's only hope. Back on Earth, Colonel Maya Brooks stood in the command center watching the screens with dread. The Celestian fleet was massive. Every ship was larger than anything humans had ever built. Their weapons could phase through shields. They could appear and disappear at will. Earth's military was strong, but not strong enough for this. Maya had fought in the colony wars. She had seen battles that left entire stations destroyed. But nothing compared to what was coming now. The fleet would reach Earth in 72 hours. Maya ordered all defense forces to prepare. She called back every ship from patrol. She activated emergency protocols. But deep down, she knew it was not enough. Kate contacted Maya through secure channels. She told the colonel everything that Liren had revealed. Maya listened without interrupting. When Kate finished, Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked if this elf woman could be trusted. Kate said she did not know, but they had no other choice. Maya agreed. She gave Kate authorization to do whatever was necessary. But she warned that not everyone would believe this story. Some would think it was a trick. Some would refuse to accept that humans were anything other than natural. Kate understood. She turned to Liren and asked what they needed to do. Liren said the Genesis engine was hidden deep inside Earth's moon. She and Ember would need to travel there to access it. But Ember was still weak from the long sleep. The dragon needed time to recover her full strength. Time they did not have. Liren explained that the facility on the moon was sealed with ancient locks. Only she could open them. But the path would be dangerous. The Celestian Empire knew about the engine. That was why they were coming to Earth. They wanted to claim it for themselves. If they got control of the Genesis engine, they would become unstoppable. No force in the universe could stand against them. Kate asked how the Empire knew where to find the engine. Liren's expression darkened. She said there had been a betrayal long ago. Someone had told the Empire about Earth and the engine hidden there, but the traitor had died before revealing the exact location. Now the Empire was coming to search for it. They would tear Earth apart looking for the engine. Humanity would be enslaved or destroyed in the process. Kate felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was just an explorer, a scientist. She was not a soldier or a hero. But now the fate of her entire species rested on what happened next. Ember growled low in her throat. The dragon could sense the tension in the room. Liren placed a hand on Ember's scaled neck. She spoke to the dragon in a language that sounded like wind through trees. Ember calmed, but her eyes still burned with inner fire. Lisa approached Kate with new sensor data. The Celestian fleet had changed course slightly. They were moving faster now. The 72-hour estimate was down to 60 hours. They were running out of time. Kate made her decision. She told Liren they would leave for the moon immediately. She would take a small team of specialists. Maya would coordinate the defense of Earth and buy them as much time as possible. Liren agreed, but she warned that once they opened the facility, things could not be undone. The engine would wake, and it would be hungry. Kate asked if there was any way to control it, any way to use it without the terrible cost. Liren hesitated. She said there might be, but she had never tried it before. The old records mentioned another method, one that did not require consuming souls. But it was only a theory. It had never been tested. Kate said they would have to try. Because the alternative was extinction. Liren nodded slowly. She said that Kate was braver than she knew, that humanity had changed since the old days. Perhaps they had evolved beyond their original purpose. Perhaps they could find a better way. As Kate's ship prepared to depart for the moon, she looked back at Earth. The blue and green planet hung in space like a jewel. It was home to billions of people. People who had no idea what was coming. People who trusted their leaders to protect them. Kate whispered a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening. She prayed for strength. She prayed for wisdom. She prayed that they would find another way. Behind her, Ember spread her wings. The dragon's scales caught the light from the distant sun. For just a moment, Kate felt hope. If they could wake the engine, if they could control it, if they could stop the Empire, then maybe humanity would survive. And maybe they would finally learn the truth about who and what they really were. The moon looked different to Kate, now that she knew what lay beneath its surface. Her ship descended toward coordinates that Liren had provided. The landing zone was on the far side, where Earth could not be seen. Lieutenant Nina Cross led the security team. She was a combat veteran with sharp eyes and quick reflexes. Nina did not trust easily, but she had agreed to come. Because Kate trusted her judgment. The team consisted of 8 people, including Kate and Liren. Ember remained in orbit. The dragon was still too weak to make the journey into the depths, but she maintained a connection with Liren through some kind of mental bond. Liren said she could feel Ember's presence in her mind like a warm flame. The surface of the moon was gray and dusty. They landed near a crater that looked like all the others. But when Liren placed her hand on a specific rock formation, the ground began to shake. A doorway opened in the lunar surface. Steps led down into darkness. Kate activated her helmet lights and started down. The passage was narrow and steep. The walls were made of the same crystal material they had seen in the asteroid facility. As they descended, the temperature grew warmer. The air became breathable. Ancient technology was still working after thousands of years. They walked for what felt like hours. The passage twisted and turned. Sometimes they had to climb down metal ladders. Sometimes they squeezed through narrow gaps. Nina kept her weapon ready. She had a bad feeling about this place. Finally, they reached a massive chamber. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into shadow. The walls were covered in glowing symbols. In the center of the chamber was something that made everyone stop and stare. It was alive. The Genesis engine stretched across the chamber like a great tree made of metal and flesh. Tubes pulsed with light. Organic matter grew alongside mechanical parts. At its heart was a sphere that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. Kate could hear it humming. The sound was not unpleasant, but it made her teeth ache. Liren walked toward the engine slowly. Her face was filled with sadness. She said this was what humanity had created. This was the weapon that had saved them and cursed them. Kate asked how it worked. Liren explained that the engine connected to living minds. It used their life force to power its reality warping abilities. The more minds connected, the more powerful it became. But each mind that connected would share the burden of what the engine did. They would feel every death, every destruction, every life erased. That was why humanity had chosen to forget. The weight of their actions had been too much to bear. Kate walked closer to the engine. She could feel it pulling at her, like it was calling to her, asking her to connect. Behind them, Lisa was examining a console. She called out that she had found something. Old records. Files that showed what happened during the last war. Kate went to look. The holographic display showed images of the battle. Humanity's fleets fighting the Celestian Empire. And then the engine activating. What happened next made Kate feel sick. The engine had not just destroyed the enemy fleet, it had erased entire civilizations. Planets full of innocent people. Species that had nothing to do with the war. All gone in an instant. The records showed that humanity's ancestors had not targeted carefully. They had unleashed the engine's full power without restraint. Billions upon billions of lives snuffed out. Kate understood now why they had chosen to forget. How could anyone live with that guilt? Nina suddenly raised her weapon. She shouted a warning. From the shadows, other figures emerged. They wore armor that shimmered like oil on water. Celestian soldiers. But how had they gotten here? Dr. Claire Hoffman stepped forward from Kate's own team. She smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. She said she was sorry, but this was necessary. Claire had been working for the Celestian Empire all along. She had been planted in Kate's research division years ago, waiting for the day when humanity would lead them to the engine. Now that day had come. Claire activated a device on her wrist. More Celestian troops began appearing, teleporting directly into the chamber. There were dozens of them. Nina opened fire. The rest of the security team joined her. The chamber erupted into chaos. Laser fire streaked across the darkness. Celestian weapons hummed and crackled. Lyran moved like nothing Kate had ever seen. The elf woman became a blur of motion. Her hands glowed with violet fire. When she touched the Celestian soldiers, their armor melted. But there were too many of them. And Lyran was weakening. The distance from Ember was taking its toll. Nina fought with fierce determination. She took down 3 soldiers before one of them hit her with an energy blast. She fell hard but kept firing from the ground. Kate ran toward the engine. If the Celestians got control of it, then everything was lost. Claire moved to intercept her. The traitor raised a weapon. But Lisa tackled Claire from the side. The 2 women crashed to the floor. Lisa was not a fighter, but she was angry. She punched Claire hard across the face. Kate reached the engine's control console. The symbols were the same ones she had seen before, but now she could almost read them. It was like her mind was being opened. She touched the console and suddenly she understood. The engine was showing her how to activate it. All she needed to do was connect her consciousness to its network. Then she could call out to other humans, ask them to join. Together they could power the engine and destroy the Celestian fleet. But Kate hesitated. The images she had seen from the last war haunted her. She did not want to be responsible for genocide. Behind her, Lyran cried out. A Celestian soldier had wounded her. The elf woman fell to her knees. Blood ran down her arm. Nina tried to reach Lyran, but there were too many enemies between them. Kate felt the pressure of the moment crushing down on her. She had to choose. Activate the engine and risk becoming a monster, or let humanity fall to the Empire. Then she heard Ember's voice in her mind. It was not words exactly, more like feelings and images. The dragon was telling her something important, showing her something Lyran had not revealed. There was another way. A way that did not require consuming souls, but it required something harder. It required trust. Kate looked at the engine again with new understanding. The records had been wrong, or rather they had been corrupted. The Celestian Empire had planted false information in the old files. They wanted humanity to fear the engine, to never use it. The truth was different. The engine did not consume souls. It connected them. It required willing participants, people who chose to link their minds together. The deaths in the last war had not been caused by the engine itself. They had been caused by humanity's rage and fear. They had targeted everyone without discrimination. But it did not have to be that way. Kate could use the engine with precision. She could target only the Imperial fleet. She could save the innocents. But first she needed Lyran to reach her. The elf woman was the key. She knew how to properly interface with the engine. Lyran struggled to stand. More Celestian soldiers closed in on her. Nina roared and charged forward. She fought like someone possessed, buying seconds that might mean everything. Kate screamed for Lyran to hurry. The chamber shook as more explosions rocked the facility. Time was running out. And somewhere far above, the Celestian fleet was getting closer to Earth. Every second mattered now above the moon. Ember felt her companion's pain through their bond. The dragon had been resting and gathering strength. But now Lyran was in danger. Ember could feel her weakening, feel her struggling. The dragon made a choice. She would go to Lyran even if it cost her life. Ember spread her wings and dove toward the moon's surface. Her scales began to glow brighter and brighter. She was burning through her own life force to reach maximum speed. As she plunged through the entrance that led to the lunar facility, something incredible happened. Across Earth and all the human colonies, people began to see visions. About 30% of all humans suddenly experienced something they could not explain. They saw through Ember's eyes. They felt the dragon's determination. They remembered things they had never lived. Admiral Laura Chen was commanding the orbital defense fleet when the vision struck her. She saw ancient battles. She saw herself standing with weapons of light. She saw the Genesis engine and understood what it truly was. Laura gasped and almost fell from her command chair. Around her, other officers were experiencing the same thing. They looked at each other with wide eyes and sudden understanding. They were not just random humans. They were the descendants of the Guardians. They carried within them pieces of the engine's activation code. It was written into their very DNA. Back in the lunar facility, Ember crashed through the chamber entrance. The dragon's arrival was like an explosion of light and heat. Celestian soldiers were thrown backward by the force. Ember roared and the sound shook the entire moon. The dragon moved to Lyrain's side, and the elf woman reached up to touch her companion. The moment they connected, Lyran's wounds began to heal. Power flowed between them. Kate watched in awe as Lyran stood. The elf woman's eyes blazed with violet fire. She raised her hands and spoke words in the ancient language. The Celestian soldiers tried to attack, but they could not get close. Ember's fire kept them at bay. Lyrain walked to Kate and placed a hand on her shoulder. She told Kate that she understood now. Ember had shown to her the truth through their bond. The engine did not need to consume souls. It never had. That was a lie the Empire had spread. The truth was more beautiful and more terrible. The Genesis engine was powered by choice. It needed humans to willingly connect their consciousness to it, to form a network of minds working together. Once connected, those humans would remain linked to the engine forever. They would carry the weight of whatever the engine did. They would feel every action, every consequence. That was the real cost. Not death, but responsibility. Kate asked how many humans would need to connect. Lyran said billions, and each one had to choose freely. No one could be forced. Kate felt the impossibility of it. How could she ask billions of people to make that sacrifice? How could she ask them to carry such a burden? Lyrain smiled sadly. She said that humanity had already made harder choices. They had survived wars and plagues and disasters. They had come together before when it mattered. Now they would have to do it again. Kate turned to the engine's console. She placed both hands on it and felt the connection form. The engine opened its awareness to her. She could feel it. Waiting. Patient and ancient. Kate sent out a signal. A message that went through every communication system humanity had. She explained everything. The truth about their heritage. The threat they faced. The choice each person had to make. She told them about the Genesis engine. About what it could do. And what it would cost? She said no one would be forced. The engine would only wake if humanity chose it. Kate felt responses coming back. Not everyone agreed. Millions refused. They did not want that burden. They did not believe the story. But billions more began to accept. They felt the truth of Kate's words. They remembered the visions Ember had shown them. They knew their children's futures were at stake. Admiral Laura Chen was one of the first to consciously activate her genetic legacy. She felt something unlock inside her DNA. A connection formed between her mind and the engine deep in the moon. She could feel other minds joining, feel the network growing. On Earth, Colonel Maya Brooks made her choice. She connected and felt the weight of it immediately. But she also felt hope. Nina Cross lay wounded on the chamber floor. She heard Kate's message and made her choice. The connection flowed through her, and her pain eased. Lisa had pinned Claire against the wall. The traitor was still struggling. But Lisa felt the call, and she answered. Her mind joined the growing network. All across human space, people were choosing. Scientists and soldiers, mothers and fathers, young and old. They connected, one by one. And then in waves, the Genesis engine began to wake. In orbit around Earth, the Celestian fleet detected the energy readings. The commanding admiral could not believe what she was seeing. Power levels that should not be possible. She ordered the fleet to jump to hyperspace, to escape before whatever was happening reached them. But she was too late. The Empire had made a critical mistake. By attacking Earth, they had given humanity a reason to unite. a reason to remember what they truly were. The Genesis engine emerged from beneath the lunar surface. It rose like a flower of light and crystal. Towers that existed in multiple dimensions spiraled upward into space. At its heart, Lorraine and Ember stood together. Their forms glowed as they acted as focusing lenses. Kate's consciousness expanded beyond anything she had imagined. She could feel billions of human minds connected through her, their hopes and fears, their love for their families, their determination to survive. Together they were the Genesis engine, and Kate understood how to direct their combined will. The Celestian fleet tried desperately to escape. Ships broke formation. Some succeeded in jumping away, but most were caught in the web of power the engine was weaving. Kate could destroy them all. She had that power at her command. Every ship could be erased. Every Celestian turned to dust. The temptation was overwhelming. She could end the threat forever. Never worry about them returning. But then she felt Lyrene's presence in the network. The elf woman shared a memory. The last time the engine had been used to its full destructive potential, Lyrene showed Kate the faces of the innocents who had died, showed her the weight of guilt that had crushed humanity's ancestors. Kate understood. Power was not the same as wisdom. Having the ability to destroy did not mean she should. She made her choice. The Genesis engine's power flowed outward, but instead of destruction, it brought displacement. Reality warped around the Celestian ships. They began to vanish, not destroyed, but relocated, sent to the far edge of the galaxy, so far away that it would take centuries to return. If they ever could. One by one the Imperial vessels disappeared. The great fleet that had threatened Earth was simply gone. Kate maintained the connection until the last ship vanished. Then she began to release the power. The Genesis engine settled back into sleep, but something had changed. The billions of humans who had connected remained linked. They could feel each other, sense the vast network they had formed. They had become something new, something more than they had been before. Kate opened her eyes. She was still in the lunar chamber. Lorraine and Ember stood beside her. Nina was getting to her feet with help from other team members. Claire had been secured. The traitor would face justice. Kate felt exhausted but also strangely peaceful. They had done it. They had saved humanity. And they had done it with mercy instead of vengeance. That meant something. That meant everything. Kate stood at the window of her ship and looked down at Earth. The planet was safe. The Celestian fleet was gone. But everything had changed. The Genesis engine had returned to sleep beneath the moon's surface, but its towers still gleamed in the starlight. A reminder of what humanity had become. Lyrene approached and stood beside Kate. The elf woman looked different now. There was peace in her expression that had not been there before. She told Kate that for the first time in thousands of years, she had hope. Humanity had proven they were more than weapons. They had wielded ultimate power and chosen restraint. That was something Lyrene had never seen before. Kate asked what would happen now. Would the Celestian Empire try again? Lyrene said they might, but they would remember what happened. Here, they would remember that humanity could strike across any distance, that humans were connected in ways the Empire did not understand. Fear would keep them away. At least for a while. Admiral Laura Chen contacted them with news. The displaced Celestian fleet had sent a transmission. It took time for the message to reach them across such vast distance, but when it arrived, the content was shocking. The Empire was requesting a parley. They wanted to negotiate. They had learned that some forces could not be conquered, only respected. Kate smiled at that. Humanity had not destroyed their enemy, but they had earned their respect. That was worth more than any military victory. On Earth, Colonel Maya Brooks was dealing with the aftermath. The billions of humans who had connected to the engine were changed. They could still feel each other. A faint awareness that they were all part of something larger. Some people were frightened by this. Others embraced it. Maya knew it would take time for humanity to adjust, to understand what they had become. But she also knew they would survive. They always had. Nina Cross was recovering in the medical bay. Her wounds would heal. She had been decorated for her bravery. But Nina did not care about medals. She cared that her world was safe, that her family could live without fear. Lisa had requested a transfer to a new research division, one focused on studying the Genesis engine and understanding how it worked. She wanted to make sure humanity never forgot the lessons they had learned. Claire was in custody awaiting trial. The traitor had been silent since her capture, but Kate knew that Claire's testimony would reveal important information about the Empire, about their plans, about other threats that might still be waiting. Kate returned her attention to Lyrane. She asked the elf woman what she would do now. Her mission as a warden was complete. Lyrane looked at Ember, who was coiled in the cargo bay. The dragon's scales had returned to their normal shimmer. Her strength had fully recovered. Lyrane said she would stay with humanity. Not as a warden, but as a teacher. She would help humans understand their legacy, help them learn to use their power wisely. She would make sure that the choice to activate the Genesis engine remained conscious. Never automatic. Never easy. Because the greatest weapon was not the power to destroy. It was the wisdom to know when not to. Kate was grateful for that. She knew humanity would need guidance. Would need someone who remembered the old mistakes. Lyrane said that Ember had also chosen to stay. The dragon had grown fond of humans during the battle. She was curious about what they would become. Days passed and Earth began to return to normal. Ships resumed their trade routes. Colonies continued their expansion. Children went back to school. But nothing was truly the same as before. Every human who had connected to the engine carried that experience with them. They had touched something vast and ancient. They had been part of a consciousness that spanned worlds. They knew now that humanity was capable of incredible things, both wonderful and terrible. Kate received a message from the government. They wanted to establish a new organization, one dedicated to studying the Genesis engine, to preparing humanity for future threats. They wanted Kate to lead it. She accepted, not because she wanted power or glory, but because she understood the responsibility. Someone needed to make sure the engine was never misused. Someone needed to remember what it cost. Lyrane joined the organization as chief advisor. Ember became an unofficial guardian. The dragon would patrol human space and watch for threats. Together, they would help humanity navigate this new reality. Kate visited the lunar facility often. She would stand in the chamber and look at the sleeping engine. It still hummed quietly, still called to her, but she resisted the call. The engine was a tool, nothing more. It was up to humanity to decide when and how to use it. Admiral Laura Chen sent regular reports about the network. The billions of connected humans were learning to communicate through their link, not with words but with feelings and impressions. It was creating a new understanding between people. Barriers of language and culture were breaking down. Humans across the galaxy were realizing they had more in common than they thought. Colonel Maya Brooks noted that crime rates were dropping. It was harder to hurt someone when you could feel their pain. Harder to hate someone when you understood their perspective. The connection was changing society in ways no one had predicted. Not everyone was happy about it. Some people resented the invasion of privacy. Others feared it was making humanity too similar, too unified. Kate understood their concerns. She made sure that people had the right to disconnect if they chose. The network was meant to be a tool for survival, not a cage. Months passed, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do with its newfound power. Other species watched nervously. Some sent diplomatic missions. Others prepared their defenses. But humanity remained peaceful. They focused on rebuilding, on learning, on understanding their place in the universe. Kate knew that challenges would come. The Celestian Empire might return. Other threats might emerge. The Genesis engine might need to wake again. But she was not afraid. Humanity had proven they could make hard choices. They could wield terrible power and still remain human. That was worth more than any weapon. She stood with Lyrane and Ember on a platform overlooking Earth. The planet sparkled like a blue jewel in the darkness. Lyrane said that she had guarded humanity for thousands of years, waiting for them to be ready. Now she believed they were. Not perfect, not without flaws, but ready to face whatever came next. Kate agreed. She looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Celestian fleet was trying to find their way home. Somewhere out there, other empires were taking notice. Somewhere out there, new threats were waiting. But humanity would face them together, connected by more than just words or laws, connected by a shared experience, a shared choice, a shared hope for the future. The Genesis engine slept beneath their feet, a reminder of what they were capable of, both creation and destruction. The choice of which path to follow would always be theirs. And Kate knew that as long as humanity could choose, as long as they could feel the weight of their actions, they would find their way. The forgotten war was over. But a new chapter was beginning, a chapter where humanity would write their own destiny, not as weapons or guardians, but as something new, something better. Kate smiled and turned away from the window. There was work to do, a galaxy to explore, a future to build, and she was ready. They all were.